ask you a slightly uncomfortable question. What if the biggest thing holding your business back is actually you? Not because you're lazy and not because you lack motivation, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because the systems, the expectations, and habits you built your business on, they were designed for a version of you that no longer exists. Think about that for a minute. Many entrepreneurs spend years optimizing and perfecting their business, but they almost never stop to ask a very simple question. Does this business still match the person I've become? Because here's the truth, most people don't talk about. Success changes you. Experience changes you. Life changes you. Your priorities evolve, your energy evolves, your responsibilities evolve. But the systems that you built 5 or 10 or 20 years ago, those things often stay exactly the same. And eventually, that's going to create friction. Early in your career, hustle. That makes perfect sense. You're building something from nothing. You say yes to everything, you solve every problem, you answer every call, you are the salesperson, you are the operations department, you are the customer service desk, and yes, you're probably the janitor. Let's be honest. Many entrepreneurs, though, they didn't start their business because they wanted to manage systems. They started it because they were really good at something. So the business grows around their ability to do the thing, which works great. Until the business grows to the point where you can no longer do everything. Now suddenly the very thing that built the business becomes the bottleneck. And that's where things get really interesting. Because the real challenge isn't fixing the system. The real challenge is letting go of the identity that created it. So we get attached to the role that we played when the business started. The fixer, the closer, the problem solver, the one who always figures it out. There's pride in that. And let's be honest, there should be. But sometimes that identity sticks around long after it stops serving you. And before you know it, you are running the business like it's year 1. Even though the business is in year 15. That's when things start to feel really heavy. You work harder, but the progress, it slows down. You add more effort, but you gain less freedom. You start asking yourself a question a lot of entrepreneurs eventually ask. Why does this feel harder now than when I started? And the answer is usually not what people expect. It's not a lack of motivation. It's not a lack of discipline. It's usually something much simpler. You're still operating inside a structure built for an earlier version of yourself. So here's a small example. In the early days, saying yes to everything, that made sense. Every opportunity matters. Every client matters. Every dollar matters. But 10 years later, if you're still saying yes to everything, you don't have a business. You have a full-time job with overhead. Here's another example. Early on, being involved in every decision, that can be helpful. But later, it turns you into the bottleneck for every single decision. And the business slows down every time you go on vacation. Which, by the way, is usually when the phone rings the most. Isn't that funny how that works? The minute you sit on a beach somewhere and think, finally a break. Suddenly 3 clients, 2 vendors, and someone from accounting all need you now. That's usually a sign. Not that people need you, but that the system does. The most successful people I know periodically stop and they ask themselves a different question. Not just, what should I do next? But they ask, who do I need to become next? Because the version of you that built the business, it's rarely the same version required to scale it. And the version required to scale it, that may not be the version required to actually enjoy it. That's where redesign comes in. Every few years, it's worth stepping back and asking a few honest questions. Are my systems built for the life I want now? Or the life I had 5 years ago? Am I holding on to responsibilities because they make sense or because they used to? Are my goals aligned with who I am today or the expectations I set long ago? These questions are really uncomfortable, but they're also incredibly powerful because the moment you ask them honestly, you start seeing things differently. You might realize the business doesn't need more hustle. It needs better systems. You might realize the team doesn't need more supervision. They need more ownership. You might realize you don't need more hours. You need fewer responsibilities. And sometimes the biggest breakthrough isn't adding something new. It's finally letting go of something old. Letting go of the task. Letting go of the role. Letting go of the belief that business only works if you hold everything together. Because when you redesign the business around who you are now, something really powerful happens. Decisions get clearer. Momentum gets easier. The work gets lighter. And it's not because you're doing less that matters, but because you're finally doing the things that actually matter most. Growth isn't just about doing more. Sometimes growth is about evolution, about recognizing that the person who built the business is allowed to grow beyond it. You can honor the grind. You can respect the sacrifices. You can appreciate the version of yourself that got you here. But that doesn't mean you have to keep building your future around the past. Because the most powerful businesses are not built around hustle. They're built around alignment. Alignment between who you are and what you're building. So if your business feels heavier than it should, if success feels more complicated than it needs to be, it might not be a motivation problem. It might simply be time for a redesign. Honor who you were, but start building for who you are now and who you're becoming. Because growth requires evolution, and evolution requires letting go. And always remember, it's your choice to focus forward